Welcome to the 2022 Runaway and Homeless Youth National Grid T Training. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Susanna Dean, Director of the Division of Runaway and Homeless Youth for the Family and Youth Services Bureau.
Good afternoon, everyone. As noted, I am Susanna Dean, the Director for the Division of Runaway and Homeless Youth here in the Family and Youth Services Bureau, and I'd like to welcome you to today's federal session. For those of you who are new to the RHY National Training, we do a federal session every year to share with you what we've accomplished since the last time we met, as well as to give you some ideas about what we've been working on and what we have planned to release maybe the remainder of this year and early next year. So please enjoy the session today. We have a lot of information to share with you. I'll take a moment to give some highlights, and then we'll have our presenters that will come in and provide a little bit of detail from our partners about what we're working on. So I'm ready for the slide deck, please. Okay, and so just an overview of the session. We'll have RHY updates, some by myself as well as Keith Wallace. We'll have updates by the National Runway Safe Line. Our National Clearinghouse will talk about our new online screening and assessment tool. We'll talk about interim findings from the National Needs Assessment, as well as updates that we're doing, exciting updates on the RAMIS dashboard. Next slide, please. And this is just a list of presenters, which I mentioned a moment ago. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to get to some of the good stuff. And so I talked about really briefly some of the accomplishments we've done and kind of looking forward to what you can expect to receive information and notices on about work that we're doing. For example, we have some new things that we've done this year, including the RHY Outreach Quarterly Newsletter. This is brand new. We released our inaugural issue just this month. And so it highlights all of the work that is taking place with the National Clearinghouse, what resources are available in that literature review database. We have over 150 articles, and we are currently updating that on a quarterly basis. That is now available to you. If you have not had an opportunity to review it or engage with that database, I encourage you to do so. We also have a new screening and assessment tool that we have implemented through the Clearinghouse. This is a document that was previously a static PDF that was available through the Clearinghouse, and on RITAC's website, we now have a searchable database that identifies tools from a variety of disciplines and resources to be able to support youth who are experiencing homelessness. And John McGaw will provide a demo of that tool later in the session. We're also working to redesign and refresh the National Clearinghouse website. We expect that to be completed by December or next month, the end of the year, this year. We're also working on the report to Congress. As you can see, we are doing 2 years concurrently, 18 and 19, as well as 20 and 21. And we expect that to be completed in January and August of next year. Next, we have a brand new RHY infographic series that we are finalizing to focus on things like racial inequity and our core outcome areas, to be able to talk about what we know about youth and their experience with homelessness based on racial and ethnicity characteristics, as well as providing an infographic on data from our report to Congress. We're doing a mental health series that'll launch in May of 2023, as well as RHY and LGBTQ youth. We've also had a increased focus on prevention this year. We've had an opportunity through Associate Commissioner Waller's leadership to think about how we implement prevention more broadly from an RHY perspective, both prevention from initial homelessness for young people, but also returns to homelessness. We had a fantastic opportunity to meet with our grantees and stakeholders and partners in Region 10 in Seattle, and learned a little bit about what is taking place in that community and how they are working in collaboration with many community-based organizations to focus on prevention. We are working on other initiatives in FISB that we hope to be able to share with you early to mid next year. We've also had an increased engagement with youth and young adults with lived experience. We have had at least 3 listening sessions with youth and young adults talking about their experience with homelessness where they feel that there's gaps in services as it relates to RHY providers, but also community-based providers, and being able to provide transition and warm handoffs to services, as well as engaging in learning about experiences of youth who identify as LGBTQ youth. In addition to that, we expect to be able to continue to have ongoing communication with young people that are receiving RHY services. We also had one engagement with RHY grantees with Associate Commissioner Waller, where we talked about what's working, what's not working, and where they feel there's opportunities for improvement or support an RHY on a number of issues. And so really appreciate that feedback, both from young adults as well as our grantees. And lastly, this last bullet is really to share with you my appreciation and the appreciation of my staff in shifting and being nimble. During the pandemic, we typically conducted monitoring visits on site, but during the pandemic, no one was traveling or going out to conduct those visits. And I know that it was a challenge in the beginning, but I can see that using that virtual site review process, we were able to accomplish over 230 grant reviews this year. And I really want to appreciate all of our grantees for your flexibility and support in conducting those. As you may know, we have a requirement by legislative statute to conduct 1/3 monitoring of our grants, and using that process allowed us to meet our requirement this year. Next slide, please. And so here also is a really quick overview of a couple of things that we have in the works for 2023. And so the National Needs Assessment Survey results will be, the full survey results will be available later this month, maybe early next month. But we will receive an overview of initial findings during this session today. We are planning to be back in person for regional meetings next year. We are planning regional meetings beginning in February and going through May of 2023. We're really excited to be able to do this. And so you'll receive more information from RITAC and maybe even your federal project officer about what's coming. We're also developing an aftercare resource series that'll launch this next spring, as well as the mental health resources, which I shared on the previous slide. And then an updated RHY frequently asked questions. Anytime we request feedback from our grantees, either through satisfaction surveys, or we have an opportunity to engage with you in these sessions, questions that you ask, as well as feedback and engagements with your FPOs, we make note of those things and try really hard to incorporate them in a resource or a tool that will be useful and helpful to all of our grantees. So I'm looking forward to publishing that updated FAQ document next year. And as you know that we're working on it, if there's anything that is burning or you have questions that you think you would like addressed in that FAQ, feel free to reach out to your federal project officer and lift those up to us in central office. Next slide, please. And so with that, I will now turn it over to Keith Wallace, who will provide some additional updates for the RHY program. Keith?
All right. Thank you, Susanna. And we thank everybody for being able to join us. I hope you're already getting a lot of good information out of the national training this year. So let's start with slide 8. All right, so we have some new RHY team members, and we are very excited to have them on board. First of all, we have Amanda Persad, who is located in Central Office, Washington, D.C. Now, Rebecca Eichelberger is not new. She's been with us for 11, 12 years or more, and but she was in Region 6, and she transferred to Region 8, so she's now in Denver, Colorado. But we are so glad to have Regina Levine join us, and she is now in Region 6, Dallas, Texas. Next slide, please. So we have 310 grantees operating 674 runaway homeless youth programs across all 10 regions. I think that's fantastic. 298, as you can see on this screen, are basic center. 161 are transitional living programs. 129 are street outreach programs, and 64 are maternity group homes. Next slide, please. So This fiscal year, 2022, the awards totaled over $53 million, and that included 91 basic centers, 54 street outreach programs, 83 transitional living programs, and 35 maternity group homes. And you can see the amounts that were awarded for each category of program. Next slide, please. Now, for fiscal year 2023, we are only offering the following notice of funding announcements, which is street outreach program and basic center program. We will not be offering the transitional living program and maternity group home notice of funding announcements in fiscal year 2023, as we only have enough funding to maintain the current programs that are funded. So for street outreach, it should be available in spring of 2023 with about 4.5 million in funding. The maximum is $150,000 per year, and we hope to fund approximately 31 new awards. Basic center programming should also be available in the spring of 2023 with 24.1 million in funding. The maximum has increased for 2023. The new ceiling is $250,000 per year, and we hope to be able to fund approximately 96 new awards. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so the Runaway and Homeless Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center should be published in the spring of 2023, and this is at one award at $2 million. And then the RHY National Communication System should also be available in the spring of 2023. This is also one award at $1.6 million. And at this point, I would like to turn it over to Anna Cody.
Thank you so very much, Keith, and welcome everyone. It's noticed I'm Anna Cody, and I serve as the Human Trafficking Advisor for the Family and Youth Services Bureau, and also had the great opportunity to serve as the Project Officer for the National Runaway Safe Line. Next slide, please. So if you are not familiar with the National Runaway Safe Line and you are new to the RHY program, the National Runaway Safe Line serves as the national communication system for youth who are in crisis or contemplating running away, youth who are experiencing homelessness, and they connected with services in shelters, mental health, or any support that they can provide to the youth, as well as their parents and family members. The National Runaway Safe Line also is the lead the prevention and outreach efforts when it comes to runaway prevention and youth homelessness prevention as well. They provide technical assistance to youth serving organizations looking to learn and implement programs to address issues related to youth homelessness and running away prevention. So here I wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments for last year and also share what we have planned for the upcoming year as well. In 2021, we actually released the list of Step Forward campaign, which really was to address youth in the online platforms. We wanted to meet youth where they are. And back then, we had the COVID-19. We were in the middle of COVID-19. So we kind of shift a little bit what we're trying to, when it comes to outreach. So the Safe Line and team, as well as the youth advisory from the Safe Line, created a Let's Step Forward campaign, which is a bilingual social media campaign to really want to encourage youth to seek help when needed. So we had different. This campaign runs through the whole year, and we really do a big push in a specific time of the year, like back to school. So I wanted to share with you. Back in August and through September 2022, we really hit to the campaign in back to school, where we were able to youth were returning to we know that youth were returning to school, so we want to make sure that they have resources handy if they need some support. So we were happy to share that the campaign reached out over 1 million views, which really connected to 13 and over click to their website. So a lot of the youth that they were seeing the ad that you see here in English and Spanish, they were interested to learn more about the Save Lyme. And that was really the main purpose of the campaign, to let people or youth know that there's help when they need it and when to find it. So really focusing on the prevention piece and seeking health behaviors in a timely manner from youth. So the campaign, we noticed, and we can sometimes we see some trends. So this last year, or in 2022 fiscal year, so we saw that a lot of the youth, they were very interested in learning more with the ages between the ages 13 and 17 than any other age. A lot of the engagement in the youth who were more interested to learn and going to the website and trying to find out what this Safe Lyme is about. We're coming from the states of California, Florida, and New York. So in the next time, right now, we're preparing for the springtime and learning how we can utilize what we learned from the campaign this year to integrate it in the new strategy for the Let's Stop Forward campaign. Next slide, please. So as you heard from Dr. Sansanadi, we are really integrating intentionally the voices of youth and what we do, also including the National Runaway Save Lyme. So this year, to the Executive Order on Equality and LGBTQ individuals, we hosted, or Save Lyme hosted, in collaboration with the Youth Advisory of the Save Lyme, a roundtable to talk about the intersection of LGBTQI2 Spirit Plus and youth homelessness. This roundtable was coordinated and led by youth, where they have a conversation about all the challenges that they face, what helped them to thrive, and what recommendation we'll have for us. So if you have a chance and you miss this roundtable, you can actually see the recorded session in the Save Lyme website. Also, this year, the White House and ACF hosted a roundtable with the Children's Bureau and Family and Youth Services Bureau Runaway Homeless Youth Program, where the Save Lyme Advisory Youth Board was invited to participate, and they were provide recommendations and how to make services and access better for LGBTQI is plus youth. So thank you so much to the youth who participate. They really share a lot of critical information for us to inform what we do next when it comes to youth voices and program information. Next slide, please. So also last year, we released the Let's Talk podcast with the Save Lyme. It really was an idea from the Save Lyme to really keep the commitment of elevating the youth voices. And first, it was an idea through the National Runaway Prevention Month, but then we saw the opportunity to keep elevating the voices of youth through the year. And this was one of the ways that we thought it was a more efficient to do, because people don't have a time to read. They're always online. So Let's Talk podcast, it was an opportunity to bring people together in a way that was practical. So Let's Talk is about youth voices, what they their experiences, what is working, some of the intersection. Also this year we extended, or last year in the fiscal year, we extended to the field. So also in the podcast, you will also listen to some of the promising practices from the Irish White field. We also highlight those who go above and beyond. In the Irish White, also we have invited to the podcast other headlines and see what the trends are and how that impact youth experiencing homelessness. We talk about running away prevention and the importance of highlighting prevention when it comes to youth homelessness prevention as well. So I wanted to invite each of you to check the Let's Talk. You can also stream it from the Google Podcast and the Apple Podcast as well. We always, I think, in 1 month periods, we have over 200 streaming. So as much as you share it, it will be also helpful for all communities to learn about youth homelessness. Next slide, please. And we are in the middle of the National Runaway Prevention Month. Last year, it was a huge success. Thank you to all the community members and partners who really support the campaign across the country. We were able to green lights from California all the way to the Niagara Falls in New York. So, and tomorrow and November 17th is again Green Light Project. So I wanted to invite each of you to check the 1-800/National Runaway Prevention Month website to learn how you can join this effort. This year also we are hosting the National Runaway Prevention Month Awards to recognize those who are really doing and going above and beyond to highlight National Runaway Prevention Month. If you are not familiar with the campaign, this is a social awareness campaign. The Save Lines lead in coordination with the Family and Youth Services Bureau to really increase the conversation at the national level about youth homelessness and really give opportunities to communities to play a role in ending youth homelessness and runaway prevention incidents. So I do want to invite you to join. If you haven't joined, please sign out to be a partner. We still time. We have a lot of activities, and you have also we're also promoting a commitment card and the Irish White training. So if you haven't taken your picture, there's still time to do it. Next slide, please. And what is coming for next year? We have a lot in our plate in planning for next year, and this is some of the activities that we are planning for 2023. So let's talk curriculum, which is runaway prevention. It's a bilingual, evidence-based curriculum who teach youth life skills with the goal of providing them with options, or, rather than running away. So this Let's Talk curriculum has gone through a redesign, and the new or updated version will be released next year, and that will come with an opportunity for training. So stay tuned for the news when this Let's Talk will be released from the Save Line, and where and the date for the training. So you will be able to implement the training. Get the training and implement the curriculum in your programs and your communities. So stay tuned for that. Also, the National Runaway Save Line created the youth ambassadors. We really have an opportunity for all youth to learn about what is youth homelessness, and also those who live experience to have an opportunity to not only share their stories, but develop new skills to advocate and speak about youth homelessness in their own community. So this next year, we're taking youth ambassadors and the youth advisory to the field. So we're planning into listening sessions, new ways to integrate the youth voices into our programs. And so you will be hearing from the Save Line when they're going into your community, or how we're going to be implementing youth voices in a new and more innovative way in 2023. Also, we're partnering with the schools as well this upcoming year, where we know the school settings play a key role in identifying youth who are experiencing homelessness and the need for connecting these youth with resources in a timely manner. So the Irish White, specifically the Save Line, will be joining forces with some of the McKinney-Vento for building the capacity and providing specific resources for school settings as well. Also, we are going to release a crisis intervention training, so we can actually provide training to youth service providers about how de-escalate de-escalate situations that can create crisis and running away incidents. What will be the framework that we use from a youth development perspective? So stay tuned about the training. Will be available for free, and the Save Line will be providing as well training and capacity building to be able to use that information in your programs. So if you are not familiar with the Save Line, here is a way that you can follow in the social media and join this year National Runaway Prevention Month. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to John McGath. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, my name is John McGowan, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the National Clearinghouse on Homeless Youth and Families. Before I get into that, I want to remind all our attendees to please refresh your browser. This will allow you to enter information and comments into the chat. If you're having trouble with that, please refresh your browser, and that should allow you to connect in the chat. Thank you. So if we could pull up the first slide, please. For those of you unfamiliar with the National Clearinghouse on Homeless Youth and Families, it is a national resource sponsored by FISB that works in partnership with RITAC and the National Safe Line that Anna just spoke to. It's a resource for organizations serving youth and young adults experiencing homelessness, housing instability, at risk of homelessness, and their families. And these are resources around research, tools, toolkits, communications, etc. So we encourage you to visit the website. What I'd like to talk about today is some changes that are coming to the National Clearinghouse website. In particular, as Dr. Dean mentioned at the opening of this session, there'll be a new website redesign, more functionality, new look and feel, more vibrant, engaging website that's coming by the end of the calendar year. We're excited for that. But there's also some new tools and functionality that are in there in the website now that I'd like to speak to. One is a new screening and assessment tool search. As Dr. Dean mentioned, there was a PDF resource that was available that allowed you to pull up existing evidence-based assessment and screening tools. This is now an online search that allows you to look based on certain criteria that you choose. So we're going to look at that in a moment. On this slide, there should be a bullet next to resources. You can take a quick look at some of the resources that are already in there, very brief. Also take a look at the enhanced search functionality for the evidence-based literature research database. As Dr. Dean mentioned, this is updated quarterly. There's about 150 resources, articles, journal articles, papers in there now. The evidence that supports our field, and the search tool allows you to search on that evidence. And we'll take a look at that briefly in this session. And the other thing I want to highlight is the new inaugural newsletter that's coming out by the National Clearinghouse. It's called RHY Outreach. And that first article, newsletter is coming out now, just approved by FISB and will be released shortly. Other things that are on the website, information that I won't get into here, look at funding, look at grantee spotlights, doing a deeper dive on highlighting some grantees that are doing wonderful work in the field. Youth voices, there's resources, videos, storyboards, articles that all feature youth voices. That's also a feature of the website. And then lastly, access to social media, other communication tools to coordinate with. So with that, I'd like to pull up the live website and give you a look at some of the functionality I mentioned. And Lori, who is speaking later in this session, is kind enough to navigate. Thank you, Lori. As you'll see at the top, this is the current look and feel of the National Clearinghouse website. This will be changing soon, but you'll see at the top there's about NCHYF, resources, research, funding, youth voices. Lori, if you could scroll down and we could see some of these features. I mentioned youth voices, there's pandemic information, the new newsletter, inaugural newsletter, our outreach, and other resources, access to social media. Now at the bottom here, this is hidden on the current. If you click on subscribe, this will allow you to subscribe to the email, all emails coming from the clearinghouse. It asks for your name and information to subscribe, as well as that quarterly newsletter, the RYE Outreach newsletter. So I encourage you to do that as soon as you can. And that's at the bottom of the page. It'll be more prominent in the new look and feel that comes out soon. If you could click on resources, Lori. Just briefly look at these before I show you that search functionality that I mentioned. There's calendar, there's multimedia, there's a clearinghouse blog, publications on various topics related to the field of youth and young adults experiencing homelessness or housing instability. Toolkits. I know regional groups are looking at aftercare in depth. At this national training, there's a wonderful aftercare toolkit in there, and some COVID-19 resources as well. I'm not going to go in depth into any of these. I would like to next go to research, the screening tool. Thank you, Lori. Okay, this is the new page, the new functionality, hot off the press. Screening and assessment tools are mentioned in the NOFOs. They're an important part of the work that's done to determine what needs our youth and young adults have and how resources and services can be best targeted. This is a database of over 120 evidence-based screening and assessment tools. If there's a way to make the screen a little larger, I think that will help see some of these details. But basically, I want to show you these search criteria for that database. You can search on keywords, the first field there. Subject, Laura, if you click on the arrow, we'll show the categories of subjects you can search on for screening and assessment tools. We're going to search on human trafficking tools in a moment, but before we do, languages, there's many languages, mostly, they're all in English. There's also a number available in Spanish. And then many have all kinds of other languages too. So if you have specific language needs, you can search there. Qualifications required, that just is a yes or no, indicating whether you need some certain training or, in one example, a master's degree is required to access the tool. But most of them are pretty accessible for everyone. Cost of materials is a big one. There's a range you'll see it's broken down in the tab of the chart below, but anywhere from free tools to more expensive, over $200 to access these. But there are many available for free. And lastly, the age range. If you're working with youth, or particularly young youth under the age of 6, or maybe school age youth, 5 to 18, or young adults, you can specify the age range that you need an appropriate tool for. But let's see what's there for human trafficking. So Lori clicked on apply, and it pulled up these options. So it'll show the subject, the language that these human trafficking screening tools and assessment tools are available in, qualifications, the price, and the age range. We're not going to do it here, but to access the actual tool, you just click on the title, and it will bring you to the website to download the PDF or however that tool is available. So that's one example, screening tools. If you'd like to export your search results, this orange button at the bottom says CSV. If we click on that, it'll create a spreadsheet, just like an Excel spreadsheet, but it's a CSV spreadsheet, and it will give you those results. So if you have refined on different results, you can export those, print them, etc. So let's go back to the search functionality. that's it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward. And now I'd like to show you the search functionality around research. So RHY grants should be work that's done should be evidence-based. That's referred to very clearly in the NOFOS as well. So here is access to the evidence, to research and journal articles on various different topics. Let's look at the criteria here. There's title and abstract. You can search by author if there's a particular author you want to find content by. The type of resource, book, chapter, journal article. You may not care depending on the subject, but you may. And then the year published. These are current. These are curated for everything, nothing before 2017. So it's recent 2017 through present. If you want to search in a particular year, you can, or you can see what comes up. So let's keep it on any. Lauren, if you could click apply, please. And these are the articles most recent to oldest through 2017. Articles, reports, guides, focusing on human trafficking. You can type in any topic you want. This does not have a drop down, so you want to make sure your spelling is clear in your search. If you could clear that, please, Lori. Thank you. And then let's search on an author. If we could put in Morton. Matthew Morton from Chapin Hall has done some wonderful research. See what comes up most recently by Mr. Morton, Dr. Morton. And you can search for any author, but I'll pull up things that he or other authors have written. So that's it. It's a quick look at this new functionality. We have tested the new search page for screening tools and assessment tools with a handful of RHY grantees. I want to thank those grantees for putting some time into this, giving us some feedback to refine this as much as possible. As you work with this search engine and find anything, maybe a tool has been updated or there's anything, please reach out to the Clearinghouse. The email address is at the bottom of the website, and we want to make this a living, breathing database and constantly refine it. It will also be updated periodically through the year by Clearinghouse staff. But that's it. And now I'd like to turn things over to Colleen Schlecht at Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago. So Colleen, over to you.
Thank you, John. I am excited to explore that new site. If we can go back to the slides. My name is Colleen Schlecht. I'm a senior researcher at Chapin Hall. Chapin Hall partners with Youth Collaboratory to support RITEC. And so in this partnership, we provide evaluation and research support to inform the events and resources made available through RITEC. We develop and deliver TTA to grantees, and we collaborate with other members of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Partner Network, whom you are hearing from during this session. So the National Needs Assessment, one of our tasks in this partnership is to oversee the annual National Needs Assessment. Each year we ask FISB RHY grantees, like many of you, to complete an online survey that asks about the types and topics of TTA that are most critical to your organization, to provide services, to collaborate across systems, to implement evidence-based practices, assessment and screening tools, and to improve the outcomes of the youth you serve. Next slide, please. Great. So I will run through a quick overview of interim findings, as Dr. G mentioned, of what we learned from this most recent year's needs assessment. So we achieved a 60% completion rate, which is a large increase from the prior year. And obviously, the more grantees we hear from, the more representative we can understand the results to be. Respondents to this year's National Needs Assessment represent all 10 FISB regions. More than half reported operating more than one FISB-funded RHY program. And we received near equal response from organizations of all sizes in terms of the number of youth they serve each year. Next slide, please. So the survey, which many of you are probably familiar with, asks about TTA topics that grantees prioritize around the 4 core outcome areas. So we're showing here the top 3 most requested topics in each of the 4 areas. And you'll see that a few topics are repeated. These include family strengthening and counseling and positive youth development. On the next slide, if we can go to that, we present the top 3 topics for both operations and leadership, and topics that cut across domains. So here we see a few topics on staff retention and mental health appear, and some other key topics that grantees would like to see RITEC offer in training and technical assistance in the coming year that will help strengthen their work. And some of these topics that we see repeating on in these different domains, you'll actually, we'll talk about in a little bit, that are planned for some upcoming events in 2023. If we go to the next slide, and here we present the top 3 topics across 5 specific domains that the survey asked about. So these are preparing for a monitoring visit, which Dr. Dean also talked about, is going to be transitioning back to in-person, strengthening cross-system collaborations, delivering services during public health emergencies. And some of you may have noticed, in the prior year, we asked about kind of services during COVID-19 and coming out of COVID-19. And this year we transitioned to just more broadly about services during public health emergencies. And then we ask about assessment and screening tools in use and the TTA needed around them, as well as implementing evidence-based or evidence-informed practices. The next few slides will highlight a few of the findings from those. So we learned from the survey this year that grantees are routinely partnering with several systems and providers in their communities, including COCs, behavioral health systems, and education systems. They also did not overwhelmingly report needing TTA to strengthen these collaborations. However, the majority did prioritize TTA on strengthening these cross-system collaborations in order to meet youth housing needs, improve youth permanent connections, and also strengthen the referral processes and protocols that are in place. Next slide, please. In terms of assessment and screening practices, nearly all grantees reported using 2 or more assessments or screening tools in their work, and these mostly fall in broad domains of functioning and well-being or mental health. Grantees did request TTA to assist with the implementation of assessment or screening for trauma or adverse childhood experiences, to assess mental health needs, and TTA around implementing assessment or screening tools in human trafficking. Next slide. And then finally, we ask grantees which evidence-based or informed practices they are implementing and where they need TTA in this implementation. So you can see here that most are implementing between 2 and 5 practices, and the most common are motivational interviewing and trauma-informed care. Although typically, less than half of the grantees that reported implementing their practices said that they found, TTA around their implementation would be very important. Next slide, please. So this was something that was new for this year's survey, as we dove a little bit more into sort of quality of implementation of evidence-based practices or assessment and screening tools. And we saw that just more than half the grantees requested TTA to support and improve implementation of the practices they do have in use. But many respondents requested TTA around fidelity monitoring and other continuous quality improvement tools and best practices. Almost all of them, actually, 90%. And less than half reported actually having fidelity monitoring tools or CQI tools in practice. And then we just note at the bottom here that some of the respondents had dropped out of the survey for some of these questions. So it was a lower pool of grantees that were responding to these questions, but still a pretty significant percentage that were requesting TTA around some of these practices. And then on the next slide, finally, we just want to show briefly what we do with all of this information. I referenced this a little bit earlier, but the team at RITEC uses the information from the National Needs Assessment to design training and technical assistance opportunities for RHY grantees. So based on the feedback we received in 2021, RITEC delivered training to meet these needs. Some examples include an event called Human Trafficking Screening and Assessment Tools and Practices for RHY settings to address TA needs for assessment and screening tools, and that was delivered earlier this fall. And then other content such as a diversity, equity, inclusion series and a youth mental health series will be available in the new year. Further, based on this feedback, RITEC hosted more TA cafes this year. And TA cafes have a format that encourages discussion among smaller groups and allows participants to really dig deeper on a topic. And then just a reminder that all webinars and training content are available in the RITEC e-learning system for 24/7 playback. And please don't hesitate to request TA via the simple web form on ritec.net or to share additional feedback. And then finally, stay tuned for upcoming training events to meet the needs that you identified this year in the needs assessment, such as family strengthening, harm reduction, services for LGBTQ+ youth, and prevention. And again, as always, thank you for participating in the National Needs Assessment. I will now turn it over to Lori Hunter from Apt Associates, who will share more about the RIMUS data dashboard.
Great, thank you, Colleen. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Hunter, and I'm the project director for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Homeless Management Information System tool that you use to upload your data quarterly. But I'm here today to talk to you about upgrades and improvements that we're making to the way you visualize your data. Dashboards are a powerful way to present your data, and using data visualization techniques that display relevant, actionable data are imperative in this visual world. They can track stats and key performance indicators and present this data in a quick, easy to scan format with the most relevant information understandable at a glance. When designing a dashboard, data visualization, or even an infographic, it's important to remember three things. Knowing your audience so that you can determine which content and the levels of detail to include, tell a story that presents the data in an intuitive way, and helps lead to action, as in what changes to my program can I make to improve these outcomes. Finally, we want to be sure that the visualizations designed would not only give you a graphical depiction of your data, but that we also included instructions on how to use it or what the data might mean. So we've applied these approaches along with a lot of research on other visualizations and that either we have built in the past or that other organizations have built to see the many ways to view and understand these data. Along with making these easy to use and understand, we wanted to make these easy to access. The current approach of trying to remember more than one password did not make the dashboards easy to use. The great news here is that the dashboards will be part of the data upload system you use today to send in your data. So you only have to remember that one password. And if you forget that one password resets are still easy for you to accomplish. So I'm going to go over to the site and I'm going to do a quick demo, a walkthrough of the current draft system to share our progress. As we walk through the demonstration of these dashboards, I do want to point out a couple of items. These are not real numbers. We're using our environment, our test environment, and the data are the data that we use when we generate changes to the system and updates to the system. We test the uploads and now we're testing the dashboards. The grantee that we're presenting is also a fake grantee, doesn't exist. I also want you to remember that these are still under development. The best part about that for you all is that once we have completed the demo and the conference, we'll want to ask for volunteers to be user acceptance testers to see if these work for you in their current format. If you want to add a visualization that is not represented here, or even have other feedback to share with us. So if you would like to be part of this process, please submit that request into the help desk the same way you would ask a question for the RIDE TA system. And from there, we'll be choosing a cross-section of grantees to be part of the testing. So over here, we've changed the homepage so that it removes the old access to the dashboard. I'm going to log in. And you'll see that I have quite a few more squares than everybody else does. It's because I'm an administrator and I have access to see other things. But you'll also see down here in the bottom left is the report dashboard. This will show up on the new system once we're ready to launch. What's great about this system is that it pulls the data in automatically. There's no reason to do any kind of pre-setup or there's no reason to have to apply filters to be able to see data right away. As you can see, by clicking on the report dashboard box, grantees on this page will be presented with a static infographic of the final annual data for that fiscal year. You can change between the years that we have data for that in this system that we're tinkering with, and you'll be able to see a full picture of that year's data. This will be static so that if there's something that you have to present externally, you'll have a full set of clean data to present that. From here, you'll also be able to dive into your data. You can see that there's some context at the top of each of the visualizations. I'll click into overview here, and it goes a little bit further. So there is information about them and also a rollover tooltip. So for instance, this one, individual parent guardian / relative ... You actually can see the entire title for that data element. As you scroll through, you'll see that there are other opportunities to see the data in different ways. And hopefully this data is actionable and gives you the opportunity to use it in your programs. On the household and family information page, we have it set so that you can also change between races, and you can change between ethnicities. So I'm going to click a race, and it'll update the data automatically for you. There's no need to hit a submit button to change the filters. On the outcomes and outputs chart, you'll see a little bit about what RAI reports to Congress, and you can compare your data to the goals, which is the red triangle. So here you have the increase the proportion of youth living in a safe and appropriate settings after exit. The goal here was 70, and this grantee achieved that goal, exceeded that goal. Down in the outputs, you can also see the number of grants with uploaded data and the number of youth served during the changes over time. So in 2020, there were 63 youth. In 2021, there were 65 youth. Our goal here is to be able to share data across more than 1 year so that you can see how your program has changed over time. The exits chart is a Sankey diagram. Sankey diagrams are a type of flow diagram in which the width of the arrows is proportional to the flow rate. So for this one, it still has the white race chosen. So I'm going to actually switch it back to all races. And what you'll be able to see as you roll over is what the path each of these youth are taking throughout the system. Same for Black, African American, or African, and same for multiple races. And then once you scroll over to the next one, you'll be able to then see what their exits were. The trends shows trends over time. For right now, we have 2 years of data, fake data loaded into this system. So you'll be able to see the trends in your data here. I'm going to scroll so you can see all the different trends that we have chosen. And then finally, in the demographics section, you can choose which option to see on the schooling information. So you can see school status, or you can switch to last grade completed, and it will update that information for you. We'll be applying the same drop-down option to the demographics table so that you can then also switch between races and ethnicities. As you can see, we've been really hard at work trying to make these interactive dashboards work for you to give you the best view of your data. You'll be able to see your data as soon as it is uploaded and accepted, which means that you'll actually be able to see where those odd outliers are. So if your youth is 25 years old or 75 years old, you'll be able to see where those show up in your screens. And it should help you have cleaner data each time you submit. So thank you so very much. We're excited to work with you on this and receive your feedback. I'm going to turn it over to Tiana, who's the Youth Services Program Specialist for RHY, and she will moderate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Lori, and thank you to all of the panelists today. As Lori mentioned, I'm Tiana Williams, a program specialist within the RHY Division's central office in a very chilly Washington, D.C. today. So I'll be moderating the Q&A portion, and I have the pleasure of passing along all of your questions to our esteemed panel. Here's what you can do. Please put your questions in the chat, and we will pull them from there. Just another reminder that if you all are running into trouble accessing the chat, please please refresh your browser and it should work better for you. All right. Now, we will get to as many questions as possible in the time that we have allotted. Do not worry, though, if we do not hear your question during this time, we will be collecting all of the questions from the chat and providing answers to share later. So let's get started. The first question came into us from the Q&A feature. The question is for the information that Keith presented. Is FISBE expecting to have TLP grant opportunities in 2024 since we will not be having that opportunity in 2023? Oh, Keith, you might be muted.
Yes, I apologize. Yes, the expectation, of course, it depends upon funding, is that we will have TLP and MGH offered again in 2023. I'm sorry, 2024, not 2023.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Keith. All right, our next question, just a little bit of confirmation for John. Where would we find the screening tool?
Yeah, the screening tool lives on the National Clearinghouse website. I will put the link in the chat. Give me a moment, but it's if you go to resources and at the bottom of that drop down, it says screening tool. You can find it there, but I'll put the link in.
Great. Thank you so much, John. All right. And our next question is for Colleen. You may have mentioned this for the needs survey, but how many agencies participated across the 10 regions?
Thank you. So we this year had actually 200 grantee responding organizations.
Awesome. Thank you, Colleen. All right. The next question that we have is from Caitlin McGuire. Thank you, Caitlin. It's for Lori. And Caitlin is asking, is there any additional fee associated with using the RIMA system?
There's no additional fee. It is free for you to use as part of your grant program.
Awesome. We love free. Free is always
Free
good.
is great.
I love free. All right. Lori, the next question is actually for you as well. Betsy is asking if the graphics that you showed are able to be printed. So is there like a PDF available or will be available for attendees to be able to save or print?
Once the system goes live, you'll be able to download, print, whatever it is that you're looking for to be able to do. Yes.
Oh, great. Very helpful. All right. And our next question is for Sanzana, our RH-wide director. Can you share more about how FISBE is focusing on prevention and what new changes may be coming?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So we've really started to think more intently about the continuum of homelessness, speaking primarily from when a young person is still at home and they are contemplating there's family crisis or areas that is drawing them to seek resources or services that could potentially cause them to run away from home, thinking about it from that continuum all the way through once they enter an RHY program, what it looks like for them to be able to receive resources to be more self-sufficient and not return to homelessness. But some of the things that we're looking at right now is, is there a possibility that we have enough information about what is prevention and how it's implemented across the country? We are looking at doing a literature review around prevention, as well as gathering as much information as we can to potentially be able to enhance our programs in supporting prevention or do some type of special project that focuses on prevention. But I think right now we're really in the early stages of learning what is prevention, the scope of prevention, and really defining from the Family and Youth Services Bureau how we want to define that and move forward. So more to come on the horizon, but just note that it's something that is on our agenda that we're focusing on and want to roll out maybe next year. something more intent about programming around prevention.
Thank you. That's exciting. It's a lot to look forward to.
Mhm.
Right. And Sanzana, another question for you. In what ways is FISB responding to increased engagement with youth and young adults? How would you encourage providers? So it's a two-part question. How would you encourage providers to engage youth in RHY programs?
I think all of the feedback that we've heard, we've had some phenomenal sessions in the conference, in the training this week already that are youth-led workshops, as well as incorporating young adults into your development of programming, understanding what works for them. If there's a particular element of your program that could be enhanced, being intentional about engaging young people and doing it from an approach that is very sincere and authentic is one thing, but also really looking at where there's opportunity to engage youth leadership, not only in your programming, but on your boards, as well as in this conference. I'm hoping that each and every one of you shared the invite for this conference and you encourage young people to participate in the conference as an attendee, but also co-presenting workshop sessions, which is something that when we were planning this conference, we were very intentional with RITAC and wanting to have presentations submitted from providers that also focused on building out youth development and youth engagement in that presentation. So we're really glad to see that come to fruition this year. And as I mentioned early on, we have had a couple of different instances throughout the year where we reached out to young people, listening, incorporating youth voices in our work. It comes through in our training and technical assistance, in our notice of funding opportunities, and in the policy work that we're doing. And you will see more of that as it relates to supporting youth experiencing homelessness, particularly around LGBTQ, and as it relates to equity and inclusion.
Thank you. Yeah, youth voice is extremely important.
Mhm.
All right. So our next question that came in from Celeste is for Keith. Celeste is wondering, why was it decided that TLP would not take place in 2023? Is there any insight on that?
Sure. The decision was based on funding. So we can only offer a new NOFO, a notice of funding announcement, when there's funding available for new programs or new grants. So for 2023, we have enough funding in the budget to continue the current TLP and MGH programs that will go into a non-competing continuation status for 2023, but not enough funding to offer any new grant programs. So this has happened to us before where we had to skip a year here and there, and we're at that level again. So, but once again, hopefully in 2024, we will see both TLP and MGH offered again. Once again, it just depends on funding availability.
Absolutely. Thank you for that response, Keith. And I just wanted to add that it is always our intention to be able to fund as many programs as possible, to be able to expand resources in communities that do not currently have an RHY, any one of the 4 programs that we offer. But based on the way our programs are awarded, each year we receive an appropriation. We first fund grantees that are on a 3-year award cycle. We do that with 1 year of initial funding, with 2 years of funding through a non-competing continuation, as Keith mentioned. And so whenever we allocate funding to determine what is available for new competition or renewal competition for grantees who may currently have funds that are expiring at the end of their period, it's based on first ensuring that we have enough funding to continue supporting those current grantees through that full 3-year period. And so what is remaining is what is available for new awards each year. And on the positive side, we had an opportunity to fund more TLPs and MGHs, and as well as BCP programs and SOP this year based on the numbers that we shared. But we do have to continue supporting those. And so we do have those years where sometimes, depending on the cycle and our appropriation, that we're not able to offer a new competition. But it is our hope that we will get an increase in appropriation. It's a hope for this year. But anyway, we appreciate all the work that you do and look forward to continuing to fund that to the extent that we're able to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that. The next question comes in from Anna. Well, for Anna, I'm sorry. What are the important factors that RHY programs should consider when serving survivors of trafficking?
Well, couple things. The Frisbee RSY does not really have a specific streaming funding to serve victims of trafficking. So what we are required to do under the GBTA is provide basic street services and making refers. So a lot of the TTA or the technical assistant, what we are building the capacity across RSY is screening and assessment tools, ways to identify youth, also coordination with an organization who has funding available to serve youth victim of trafficking. So just to answer the question, what we're asking is to integrate practices related to the identification of youth, making sure that there is a way in a process for refers if the organization does not have additional or other funding stream from other programs like the Office of Trafficking or OVC to provide tailored services. So if you or the program has that additional funding, that is the best practice that we have highlighted in right tag training that we have provided for the last 3 or 5 years as it relate to housing. We also provide practices related to peer-to-peer recruitment within programs. Also, we are looking for next year to talk about underserved youth trafficking within programs as well. So the practices that we provide through RHY are related to the activities the grantees identify as a need, as well as the promising practice from the field that we can be helpful for our grantees with now expectation that they had to serve a youth because we don't provide funding for tailored services. However, we know and we recognize the youth coming into our programs are victim of both sex and labor trafficking.
Mhm.
So we do within the scope, the services that we can provide, some of the strategies to really support the youth, and hopefully, coordinate it with somehow with other organizations to and work together with RSY to support the youth in the long term.
Thank you, Anna. It's very helpful. All right. So this question is actually for either Sanzana or Keith. Is prevention to supersede shelter in the BCP? Can we use BCP for prevention instead of shelter?
That is a very good question, and one that we have heard before. And the answer to that is the primary focus for a BCP is to provide emergency shelter for youth for a period of up to 21 days. The BCP is structured that it is shelter first, in addition to in supporting prevention where appropriate, but it would not be appropriate for a program or a grantee to not offer shelter and focus solely on prevention. And so we can also share a response from our frequently asked questions on that and ensure that there's any clarification needed in the update. We'll be sure to include that as well. But I would encourage anyone that has question or need clarification on that to please review the BCP language in the statute, and it focuses on shelter as the primary focus on that, but prevention is an allowable activity.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Sanzana. All right. This question is also for Anna. What additional support do you feel is needed for your own staff who are in turn supporting hired survivors? So, I guess what support would you recommend for organizations who are supporting survivors that are being hired for as staff positions?
We did have the opportunity, I think, 2 years ago to have a conversation with grantees to inform a resource that we released last year about best practices of integrating youth in survivors of trafficking. for programs. So a lot of the practices described include opportunities not only to provide trauma-informed services, but also to the whole organization to be trauma-informed, prepare the organizations to hire survivors within the programs. That means looking into their practices, policies, and protocols, know when survivors can have opportunity for leaderships, provide, be flexible, as well. So I know we don't have the time to go through all the best practices that we have outlined and discussed with grantee to the year, but I do recommend to go into the clearinghouse under resource, under publication tab, and download the survivor best practices that we can really describe and outline each of the practices the RHY grantees describe as best practices when it comes to survivors.
That's
And I
great.
can put it also in the chat as well.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Anna.
Right.
And I think looking at the time, we might have time for one additional question. And this last question will go to Sanzana. How is FISB working with other federal agencies to streamline resources and supports for youth and providers?
That's an excellent question. For those of you who are familiar with the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, there is language there that requires and strongly encourages partnership with other federal agencies. We have been in partnership and collaborating with our partners at HUD. We have instituted or reinstituted a quarterly meeting this year to talk about where there's overlap and coordination opportunities for sharing resources. FUP and FYI vouchers are one of those areas that we have begun to lift up more for sharing of resources and coordination between RHY and HUD grantees. We also have partnerships and collaborations with the U.S. Department of Labor, where we're looking at resources to enhance training and supports around education and employment, as that's one of our core outcome areas. We also are working very closely, which you'll sometime this month or maybe early next month receive notice of partnerships that we're developing and fostering with the U.S. Department of Education, particularly around engaging McKinney-Vento liaisons, as well as local education agencies and state education agencies, being able to utilize and benefit from funding that the Department of Education receives that could be of resource to RHY providers, and then really being able to lift up and share resources that are developed by our federal partners, such as SAMHSA, Department of Education, in our resources that we have. We often include those resources through the RITAC Roundup. Here's what's new, here's what's available. We also post those on the RHY website as well as the clearinghouse. And so we are definitely looking at where there's opportunities to engage our federal partners. We're also looking at where there's opportunities to further engage with our partners at the Department of Justice. And so definitely a lot of work in the works and in planning. And we've started to see some fruition from those partnerships. We had some of our federal partners that participated in the training this week and presented workshops. And also were able to share some of their resources because there is a very direct link and coordination and intersection between runaway and homeless youth and all of our federal partners, because they are also youth serving partners. And one of the things that we know as human beings is that the things that we encounter in life are not isolated, right? So the family crisis issues that some of our young people have may impact their ability to continue in education, may lead them down the path of juvenile justice or juvenile delinquency, or drop out of school, which impacts their ability to become employed and maintain employment, as well as a livable wage. So all of the areas that we're dealing with in RHY, we're looking to kind of use a wraparound approach and thinking about where there's opportunities for us to infuse resources to meet the needs of that young person or that family that may be outside of the scope or the resources of FISB or HHS. So that's a great question. Thank you for that, and looking forward to sharing more about those partnerships in the months to come.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Well, thank all of you on the panel today, and thank all of you for your great questions. As a reminder, if we did not get to your question, it is okay. FISB will receive a full list of questions and will provide responses. And in the meantime, I will put in a plug for a document you heard throughout today, which is the RHY Frequently Asked Questions document. It can be found a couple places, but one of them is the RITEC website under resources, and it might even be in the chat right now. But before you leave, I want to put in a plug to please be sure to complete the session evaluation for today. I know you are being asked to evaluate a lot this week, but I cannot stress enough how valuable your input is for the development in these events and making them the most useful. So we want to hear what we did well and areas where we can improve.